From KMUW Wichita.
From Toronto, Ontario.
And from Armenia, Spain.
This is You're Saying It Wrong. Let's talk words. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Ross. I'm ready for a fight. What about you guys? Not with you, but about words. We're fighting with suffixes today.
Ooh, Fletcher, we're always ready for a fight. We're tough.
Bring on that suffix. Bring on that prefix too.
Petrus kids, yeah, they're always ready for a fight. We're talking about suffixes today, and the battles between different kinds of suffixes that look the same but causes problems. I guess maybe when we try to spell words.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Pretty much. That would be it. Yeah.
Oh, Kathy, you wanted to say something first about pet peeves.
I did. I want to say this is the last call for pet peeves, kids. So if you want to get a pet peeve on the show, and we want you to get a pet peeve on the show, please send it in or email us or send a voice recording of what is your pet peeve or what are your pet peeves. We'll take 18 in one email. We're not picky. We're also peeved a lot, so we're happy to get them.
Preferably language pet peeves. By the way,
yes.
I mean, you're welcome to vent about whatever else you want, but that might not make it on the show. And so we do have one just real quick before we get moving on into the episode.
So Rachel was saying she enjoyed hearing our pet peeves, and she was talked about a genuine fakes. And it said it reminded her of the unnecessarily extreme annoyance I feel. I did like this. When someone says things like he has a fake watch, she said, the watch is really a watch. It's not really a Rolex brand watch. A knockoff watch is a watch. Fake should be applied to the brand. But anyway, she went on. I just love our listeners.
Right on that, but you hear it the right way when you hear it, though. Anyway.
But then she, of course, hates Between You and I, which we've talked about. But this is the one we want to address right now. My biggest peeve of recent times is different than. I hear and see it so much that it's completely infiltrated English, and I even hear it trying to come out of my own mouth, but I still feel that it is wrong. Different than versus different from.
Yeah.
Correct.
I say different from, but we did a little study on it, and the Bank of English, Collins Bank of English, 30% use different than in speech. Only 7% use it in writing.
There's no way that's true. There's no way it's only 30%.
Very interesting. It could be a while back too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw this out here. That's a couple of years old. And that percentage has been pretty much set since the early 1800s. Although another source says recently, different than has suddenly shot up in usage, even in academic papers.
Without a doubt.
Which is interesting.
Without a doubt. I hear different than all the time. Like it's enough that I am not that bothered by it like Rachel is, because I hear it all the time.
I think I'm the same. I think you hear it much more. Then you also have, though, different too, which is a very British usage that I can't think of. I've heard. Have you? Different too?
I've heard it. I don't hear people say it, but I've heard it.
Yeah,
I've heard it. I don't think I would ever say that, though. I don't like different than. The problem with languages is not really that logical. Different than, different from.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could argue different from is quote more correct. But I mean, English is such an illogical. I mean, language is so illogical that it's not a big deal to me, but it still wince when I hear it.
Well, here we go again, though. Who is responsible for why different from? Why is different from other different than?
Yes.
Robert Baker again. Remember Robert Baker? We've mentioned him a few times. It was all Robert Baker in his book, Reflections on the English Language in the 1770. And he just decided that different than, a different manner than is not English. We say different to and different from. The last of which expressions I have in another place, given the preference.
Although Mr. Baker, we don't say different to on this side.
Right. Why can't we say different than?
Yeah. It's
one of
so
those
funny.
Things, it's one of those things where I do say different from, And I guess I do notice, maybe I lied a second ago. I guess I do kind of notice when people say different than, even though it's said all the time. But also, I cannot imagine a real good reason to say one or the other, like to definitely say one or the other. So even if it bothers me, it's like it's one of those stupid things that bothers me. Sorry, Rachel. I mean, I don't mean that doesn't reflect on you. I just think like sort of like, we honestly, and this is going to bother you guys, but we've talked about on accident versus by accident. Like we couldn't come up with a real good reason one should happen as opposed to the other, even though people older than I am are really bothered by on
that would
accident.
be us.
Right. But when we really talked about it and dug in, there's not a really good reason it has to be by accident as opposed to on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, like if something can be on purpose, why can't it be on accident? Like, regardless, it's one of those things where like when you really dig down, there's not a really good argument, in my opinion, for one or the other. So even if it does bother me when people say different than, that's me. That's my problem.
Yeah,
because there's not a real good argument, in my opinion, not to say different than.
Actually, grammarians in the 19th century tried to come up for a rule. Why than bad? Why bad than?
Yeah.
And they said that than should only be used following a comparative adjective. Something that would allow for an increase in a quality or quantity or relation.
And different is not a comparative adjective. Kathy's right.
Yeah.
So it would be smaller than and different from.
Yeah.
I mean, is that really compelling though?
Not really. It's not to me. To be honest,
it's an argument. But the one problem with language is it's custom too, and we hear, like for me, custom is different from. We can argue back and forth. Is this correct grammatically? Is this the reason grammatically? I hear different from as being correct or good English. I don't hear different than. But gradually, as we're talking, I'm beginning to hear different than, and I'm probably in 5 years, I'll be not great, saying different than. Language changes.
Well, Darwin used different than.
Darwin was sort of a tick to me, but whatever.
I just want to say I was really proud when my daughter was 2 years old, and I was giving her a bath one day, and I noticed she said different from.
Good girl.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I mean, it's not like I ever said to her you should say different from. It's just that's what I say, and that's what she picked up, and it just it felt good that she was saying it correctly.
Yeah, but that is good. I'm not sure if I can't. I don't even know which I use. I don't know if I do say different from, or do I say different than? Different from. He's different from.
I'm positive.
Different from me.
From.
Different from me. Yeah, I think I say from. I think I do.
But there's a quote here which I don't like. English Grammar for Dummies. Different than is never correct. What you want is different from. You can stop reading right here because you now have all the information you need. Now, that to me is a little bit too strong. I don't like different than. I don't use it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
At this point, I mean, like, what is it doing to your sentence if you say different than instead of different from? Like, what is happening here with the communication other than we're getting all bothered about this word instead of that word? Like, what's happening? It's not even like you sound dumb or anything anymore because everybody says it. And I'm saying this as somebody who is bothered by it.
I am too.
I just feel like at this point it's a personal problem. It's that I'm bothered by it. It's not something that people need to be worried about in any way.
No.
Although if you have a question about it, I think when in doubt, I would stick with what different from.
Baker notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Or Baker withstanding.
Baker withstanding. I'm gonna say. Now we're going to go back to the previous episode with un and not.
Yeah, right. Now we're going to zip somewhere completely different. This just intrigued us. This is just a mini quiz for you, Fletcher.
Oh.
Mini quiz time. Nothing to do with notwithstanding or different than. This is different from the other topic.
Mhm.
When do you think the word rerun, RERUN, first entered the English language? We're saying this
Wow.
might be a trick question.
Wow, I believe it
We're
is.
giving you 4 decades: 1940s, 1800s, 1930s, 1960s.
Right, because the only thing we think about with a rerun is television. um, and you said 1800s, the entire century. It could be anywhere in there.
Yeah, we'll throw the entire century in for that.
Well,
We're liberal with that. Yeah.
Let's
I
go
wasn't, but
let's go with the 1800s then. Why? I would have no idea unless you had like serials, like books that were coming out and somebody ran it again for some reason. But let's go with 1800s just
And
because.
you're correct. And you're
Oh,
correct. It was done in
Ish.
reference to races.
Ish.
Races would rerun the race, which would be that.
Oh,
Now
like
we're gonna but let's throw something else out. When did it come into as a noun for a film?
for
Rerun
television
film. Rerun film before television. That
Oh,
gives
okay.
gives it away right there.
Yeah,
Right?
why'd you do that, Ross? You
I don't
shouldn't have
know.
said
I just
that.
asked the question.
You're
I
just too
answered it.
kind. You're
I
supposed to be
know.
cutthroat here. You're supposed to be like a jaguar.
Was it one of those options that you gave me, or is it even earlier than the
Yes.
1920s? Okay, then 1920s I think was the earliest one you gave me from the
No,
20th.
it's the 30s, but that's right.
That's
Oh,
right.
really? The 30s? I would have expected the 20s.
No,
I would have expected the teens, honestly.
no, it's the 30s. Ross
Okay.
gave that to you,
Yes.
so it doesn't count as a win.
It
Does
does.
not get entered on your big score.
Yeah, but he got the first one, which is a win. So I'm going to be
Yeah,
kind.
that was you. We did. Never mind.
Fletcher is very able in this sense, which is a brilliant segue to.
I think though,
able.
Ross, he might be able.
We got an email from Judith in Raleigh. Hi, y'all. I'm still listening and enjoying your podcast. Shout out to Fletcher as well, as always.
Hey,
You've been talking about spelling the last few weeks. This is an older email. And for some reason, it made me wonder about the able and ibble endings. There are a lot of words like walkable and thinkable, but then we have risible, visible, variable.
Mhm.
It's hard to figure out if it's a matter of the preceding letter combos, keeping the root word prominent, or somebody's whim. Any
She
thoughts
knows
on this
us.
in all of your abundant free time? Well, I wouldn't call the free time that abundant, but she was joking. Thank you for sharing your interest and knowledge about English and a couple of bonus tongues. Judith, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Thanks, Judith. You know, there's another word, 2 words that use both of them. Collectible. We see collectible spelled both ways all the time.
It's true. That
It's
always
true.
fascinates me. Now I've got to look it up.
Actually, I'm curious. How do you guys? That I see all the time too. I spell it a certain way all the time.
Well, there's two. To me, they mean 2 different things.
Oh, really?
Oh no,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, the
A
same-
collectible, a noun is AB. Something is collectible to me is IB. That's in my head. I'm just saying.
Oh,
Interesting.
I have it always as to me at least. I always have it as IB. I hate AB for some reason. I have no reason why. I just don't like it. Fletcher, what's your collectible opinion?
It would be hard for me to care less.
Yeah, collectible usually, I'm just looking here, is attached to objects with appeal to collectors. A collectible is anything that you collect, they're saying. Gosh, that's like really specific.
That's getting really, I mean, that's like it's meaningless. I see it a lot because I, buying books all the time. So I see the I usually more frequently than the A, but there's no real difference. The one thing is, to answer Judith's question though, the ibble,
there was a question here.
You say collectible. What do you? The ibble ending is for words of, pretty much exclusively for words of Latin origin, and there are about 100 IBLE, and there are about 180 of those words. And according to a lot of sources, no new words are being created with ibble endings. The able, basically.
Isn't that also Latin?
A lot of it is Latin.
Ah!
Oh,
But-
good. Well, I'm glad we've answered this question.
Isn't that helpful? But but new words like, I don't know, trying to think of a modern word that would be
Collectible. I'm sorry.
Memeable. Memeable. Something is
yeah.
memeable,
That's
right?
good.
A playable foul ball, that sort of thing can be. Those are all found with ABLE. When they make a new word up, it's ABLE. Is that unlineable? Is that whatever? I don't think anyone would ever say unlineable, but now if they do, windsurfable. There we go. That
Windsurfable?
sure is the sea windsurfable.
I think that you're really like clawing here, Ross. But I'll give you your windsurfing.
Yeah, but the point is, if you're going to spell, just think of this. You're going to spell windsurfable in your head. I'm spelling it with an ABLE.
You know what I'm thinking more is abseilable.
Oh, yes. Abseilable, definitely.
I mean, the ABLE makes more sense because it's able to be windsurfed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's windsurfable. So you're saying the IBLE just is a set of words and it's just kind of hardened into that, and there aren't any more IBLE words happening?
Well, they're just when we make, language is productive. Language keeps creating new words. Right. And when we do in English, there's no, English has, of course, no grand, poobah who controls everything. But when it's done, it's almost ABLE. There's a little trick, too.
I was going to say, are you talking about this rule that's not always a rule?
Yeah. Do you want to throw it in?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was just going to say it. I'm sorry I cut you up, but the rule, but it's a typical English rule. If you remove the able from a word, ABLE, you're left with a complete word. Windsurfable, as in Ross's case, windsurf. Abseilable, abseil. Affordable, afford. If you remove able from a word, like sensible, you have sense, S-E-N-S. That's not a complete word. But Ross.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, of course. That's the work is completely true, such as accessible, contemptible, digestible. All of that those words all violate that wonderful rule that we have.
What a rule.
So, I know. But it's a basic. Also, after the fact, after you've done it, you're going to go, well, whatever. Just look at it.
Never mind.
Yeah, I know.
Right. I'm going to go windsurf now.
So it sounds like
windsurfable, actually, but go on.
It sounds like the way to know is that you have to know it. You have to know which words are IBLE. I mean, if it refers to something very modern, it's very likely going to be ABLE because it's probably a new word. But otherwise, you just kind of have to know. Like there's no real way to tell other than just knowing.
Knowledge, yeah. It's not like. Oh, go Ross. I'm sorry.
No, but that basic rule is usually fairly true. So I mean, we do have, and we know a lot of the IBLE words just by osmosis over the years. So it's not an amazingly difficult problem, I think.
Well, the fact that there are only 180, is that what you said, Ross?
Yeah.
Something like 180? That's not many when you think about like one's vocabulary. And I'm looking right now at words that end in IBLE, and a lot of these are not really words to me.
Exactly, Kat.
Like cognoscible, adducible, frangible.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It didn't look right when I looked. Sorry. You know how it is. I play Scrabble. It's so incatable. No, non-controversial. Never mind.
Bunch of letters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that led us quickly. I think we should go before we get into the major part, though, of agentive subs. We talked about these before. The OR versus ER. We have the same problem. Like Fletcher, what's the difference between nouns ending in ER versus those in AR?
Oh, right.
OR. We talked about Fletcher. That Latin raises his ugly head again. ER or OR endings for things like ball player, street vendor, or whatever. How do you know which is which one to use?
All I remembered was that Latin had something to do with it.
It always does.
Is it the case that the OR words are more likely to have come from Latin-based words.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a rule here. Kathy, you want to relate the rule to Fletcher?
It's another one of those almost always rules. Latin words which end in ate, A-T-E, take the suffix OR. Dictator. There's not dictator.
Mm-hmm.
Vendor. Vendor
Vendate?
doesn't end in ate.
Vendate.
Senate. Sorry, Senate. Senator. The problem, it's funny. I'm doing pronunciation. I'm doing spelling pronunciation. I'm looking at the word Senate and I'm thinking Senate.
Uh-huh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's just so odd.
It is.
But yes, Senate ends in ATE. You have senator. So yeah, it goes on from there.
Yeah, ER basically is more common in English, just like we were talking about able in English as well. And it usually, that seems to come from the Germanic roots, the Old English roots, etc. Drive, driver, run, runner, drink, drinker. And then the OR is basically, tends to be Latin. You don't spell driver, D-R-I-V-O-R, etc. And that's pretty much does that.
I'm going to interject here now, but one of the rules, they always say that ER is almost always used when the verb involves usage of an agent or a doer. But then I would argue that's the same with a lot of the OR ones.
It is.
I mean,
It's true.
so that just seems like so many words to me, ultimately.
Like, Kathy and I are both authors, and we very much auth.
We auth all the
time. But that, I mean, those rules are like the problem with English really is you just got to learn it. It's,
Yeah, it's one of those things. We have so many influences from so many places. I guess in this case, Latin and Germanic, that it all jams up together, and it's hard to know which is which. I guess, Ross, you knowing Latin, is it easier for you then just to know right away when one needs to be an OR?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it really helps. I mean, I think it helps just instinctively. Things look correct. Or they look incorrect. But there are problems. Like, I mean, let me give you two. Here's one that doesn't help at all. Computer. You can spell computer two different ways correctly. Computer and computor. So
computer?
Computer is a common spelling of computer.
Yeah,
it is.
Look it up.
Computer. I've never seen that in my life. It's maybe an archaic or obsolete spelling.
Yeah, but it's still a technically correct sort of thing. I mean,
well, it's archaic. I'm sorry, Rose. I think that's just
okay.
Think about it like this. If you were talking about a person who was computing something, and you called them a computer, and you were writing this down, how would you spell it?
I would spell it OR.
Yeah, because we're not talking about a metaphorical thing here. Like they are not a machine. They are someone who is computing, and you want to distinguish that from the machine, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying. I find that a little specious, but I'll give it to you guys.
I'm going to give you another problem here. This was a woman who went to university in, there's a Canadianism, a university in the UK. And she was an advisor and a convenor. I don't know which one it is.
Advisor, I would do OR.
OR, but but she also had in UMass, when she was at UMass, it was advisor, OR. She goes to the University of Sussex and the University of Edinburgh, and it was basically split, ER versus OR was 50-50.
I see, because I would always think of advisor with an OR.
I would too. So that's interesting in that sense. And going back to Fletcher, your Latin question, I look at computor as you do. I see the OR, I see the guy doing it. But Kathy's, but I don't know, like, would people, so it can be confusing too. You know it as an OR, and then other goes,
counselor is usually OR, right?
It's usually OR.
But now I'm looking, if you've got the double, can you do counselor with an E? Now I'm sorry, I'm just like, this is making me think.
Is it?
Yes, counselor is a variant.
Yes, in American
and it's
English,
older.
Yeah, So we can, I mean, here we go again with this. Now we've given you a lot of useful advice, which is like,
Who was
look
it that
up in
wrote
the
us, Judith?
dictionary
What was her
quickly.
name again? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I said,
look
who
it up.
wrote us? And I'm sorry.
But she didn't ask about this, so we were okay.
She asked about Ibble and Abel.
Yes, and we were less confusing on that than this. Anyway, we're going to move on to eponyms.
This is something that both Ross and I love. So, go Ross.
Okay, eponyms, Fletcher, do you know what they are?
Yeah, sort of. So a long time ago, we talked about the difference between eponyms or eponymous and titular, right?
Mhm.
But I still can't remember quite which is which. An eponym is something that's named after a person. So, right? So like, no, I was about to use the fake origin of crapper toilet.
Well, yeah, that's actually one. It's a person, real or fictitious, that from something whose it takes his name. The word.
Yeah,
But no,
like-
that's not. That's
Right,
that's a
that's not,
mythical example of an eponym.
and it
because
wasn't
Crapper was
nothing
not
in
named
like-
after him.
Yeah,
Right.
that was a mythical one. But the idea, no, I was talking about the idea of what an eponym is. Yes.
So like an eponym is if you've got something that's named after a person. I'm trying to think of a common example here.
Well, we're going to throw one out right now, Fletcher. We're going to save you the trouble.
No, we're not. We're going to ask you, is this an eponym or not,
Okay.
Ross?
Okay.
Okay, gerrymander. We had talked about that long ago, didn't
Oh,
we?
right.
That's an eponym, is
Right.
it not?
Isn't it? I mean, I know it's named after Elbridge Gary. And
Yeah.
it got turned
So
into
it was.
Jerry.
That's an eponym. That's
a
Okay, here's
Jerry.
another one. And let's throw this one in. Boycott. Eponym or not?
Oh, right. I believe this is always assumed to be, at least that I remember seeing this as the commonly understood origin. So I guess I'll say it is an eponym.
Are you sure?
No.
Can you sound more positive though about it?
Yes, I believe it is.
And you're correct.
Okay.
It came from the Captain Charles C. Boycott, a land agent of Lough Mask. I'm pronouncing this wrong, I'm sure, because it's Irish, in County Mayo, who refused to lower rents for his tenant farmers.
I thought this was a really, I read up a little bit about it. I thought this was a fascinating word origin occasion. The guy, I mean, basically, I didn't realize it, but Ireland was literally 90% of the land was owned by 0.1% of the population.
I'm not going to say something, but it's a correlation here. Go on.
Oh, and tenants the landowners owned the land and they gave tenants yearly leases, not 5-year leases, yearly leases.
Mm-hmm.
And if you couldn't pay, you could be just thrown off the land immediately. And Boycott basically was a land agent for an English lord I think in Dublin or whatever, who basically the tenants asked for a 10% reduction and a 25% reduction. He only gave him 10%. So what happened was, this was the beginning of a huge movement in Ireland. People literally ostracized him. Everyone stopped dealing with Charles Stewart Parnell, who was a Irish, basically for Irish freedom, basically said, let's don't get violent. Let's basically shun these people.
Mm-hmm.
So Boycott was shunned. No one talked to him. And that's how the guy's name took on that ostracism. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So like, I'm going to pull a boycott on you. I'm going to pull what we did on that guy.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That is really interesting.
I love the fact that they said it was the word boycott was then adopted all around the world in newspapers. And they said in Japanese, it was boycotto.
I know, I love that.
Yeah, boycotto. That's so cool.
And actually I just found this. I'm going to read you the exact, this is weird because we have the exact origin, the date, this time of the origin of the word. There was a James Redpath who was a Scot who came over to the States, and then he went back to Ireland to report on the incident. And he was talking to a Father John O'Malley, who was one of the agitators against boycott. And Redpath goes, I'm bothered about a word. What is it? Said Father John. Well, I said, this is Redpath. When people ostracize a land grabber, we call it social excommunication. But we ought to have an entirely different word to signify ostracism applied to a landlord or land agent like boycott. Ostracism just won't do. The peasantry is not going to know the meaning of the word. I can't think of any other. No, Father John said, ostracism won't do. He looked up, he looked down, tapped his big forehead and said, how would it do to call it boycott him? Isn't that cool?
I love it. It's such a weird thing because boycott to me doesn't sound like a person's name. I mean, now that I'm hearing you use it as such, of course it does. But yeah, I always assumed it was some sort of portmanteau-y sort of thing that I had no idea about, you know?
Yeah. Poor Redpath, the guy who just said that, he came back to the States and then got run over by a horse-drawn trolley and died.
Yikes.
Well, that was quick, maybe, I hope.
Yeah, I don't know.
Next. The word is dunce.
Dunce. Dunce also sounds like an eponym. I don't remember ever hearing that it is. Seems like one of those things that I would have heard, but I don't know. I think it is. I think it is. Who is dunce? Tell me who dunce is.
John Dunce Scotus.
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 Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Ross. A Scottish scholar of philosophy and theology. His followers were in control of the universities until the Reformation. Then there was the whole reaction against everything. He was singled out as a hair-splitting scholastic, so all of his followers became known as dunces because they were following him. And then it spread just to mean anyone who was, quote, dull-witted.
Yeah, we've sold a lot of his books, actually, early editions of his books. I know him really well in that sense.
It's funny. I wonder if, I mean, maybe the people buying your books would know, but I wonder how many people, you know, seeing that name realize that that's where dunce came from. I
don't think many do. And also his name was D-U-N-S, incidentally. And it
changed, really?
Yeah. Duns
Okay.
Scotus, D-U-N-S, Scotus, C-O, S-C-O-T-U-S. And then it changed to, in English, it changed to this U-N-C-E. And he was called the subtle doctor of the church, Dr. Subtilis, very subtle, because he was very, very persnickety in that sense.
we can't relate to that at all. I don't think.
I know. No, he could be very. I mean, to read, he is very
dense.
Latin. He is dense. Is not the word. Yeah,
dunce is dense. Okay, Maverick.
Oh yeah, Maverick. Yeah, I think that's an eponym too. Are you just throwing all eponyms at me? This sounds. I think I do know. I think I do know that this is an eponym. I can't remember where it came from, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Yes, it comes from Samuel A. Maverick. He was the one of the sources says he's a Texas cattle owner, and he was very negligent about branding his calves. So the calves would wander around all the time, and basically you could round up a calf that wasn't branded, so he got kind of upset. And that's how the word came into being, as something that wanders around. He finally started realizing he better brand them. But the interesting thing was he really wasn't, they act as if he's a rancher. He was really more of a banker. And he basically got these cattle and basically just basically just didn't bother with it. Like, I wouldn't think automatically if I get a huge bound of cattle, do I have to brand them? I wouldn't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you trust like whoever is running your ranch or whatever. Yeah.
And basically what happened was, he basically suffered by that. And the name stuck for like basically something that would wander around or be different. So it started out as like a calf or yearling found without an owner's brand. Then it became individualist or unconventional from the 1880s on.
I love the fact, though, that his grandson, because Ross and I were working on something that never has come to fruition yet. We're still thinking about it. Maury Maverick became a congressman, a Democratic congressman, and he was also kind of like independent stuff. And he coined the term gobbledygook. His big thing was hating the language in government, which he called gobbledygook.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kath and I got really into that. I mean, he was really big on basically trying to get a good, firm, good, straightforward English into government. Interestingly enough, he was a maverick too, in that not only against gobbledygook, but he was the only liberal Southerner who voted against the anti-lynching bill many years, he was definitely a maverick in those days.
Yeah. Next word, martinet.
Oh, wow.
We're in the M's now here.
Yeah. Gosh, I've never thought about this one. It sounds like somebody's name. Why not? Let's make it somebody's name. Who is Martinet?
And you are correct. This one really interested me. It came from a French military officer, Jean Martinet, killed at the siege of Duisburg in 1672. Supposedly he was a real pain in the butt. Strict discipline for the French regiment. Now, it basically means, someone who's a stickler for discipline. But what got me and Kathy both really interested was martinet is used in English, but there's no French usage of the word as disciplinarian. Isn't that cool?
Wow, yeah, that is interesting.
Speaking of martinets, we also have marionettes.
I'm going to stop trying to discern a pattern here. You've given me only eponyms so far, but I'm not going to assume anything one way or the other. Marionette does not seem right. It does not seem like an eponym.
Okay, we were saying you're correct, sort of, but Ross, in fairness, it does mean Little Mary.
Yeah.
So we had this as not an eponym, but it kind of is, because they used string puppets, to depict, especially to depict biblical events in the Middle Ages. And the Virgin Mary was obviously like a big, one of the top stars, thus marionette. So I would argue it is an eponym.
I would too. I think the only non-eponym we've mentioned today is crapper, is crap, with the
which was not on the list.
Which we did the last time. Yeah, that wasn't on the list. But let's give it to Fletcher. Crapper. Fletcher, say no. I think that's
You're Saying It Wrong is part of the NPR network and is produced in the studios of KMUW in Wichita, Kansas by me, Fletcher Powell. Kathy Petrus records from her home in Armia, Spain, Ross Petrus from his home in Toronto, Ontario in Canada. Torrin Anderson composed our theme music, and our digital team is Beth Golay and Carly Cooper. You can find all of our past episodes by subscribing to the You're Saying It Wrong podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or by visiting us at kmuw.org. If you have a question for Kathy and Ross, if you'd like to suggest a topic, or you just want to reach out, you can email me at powell@kmuw.org or email them at kandrpetrus@gmail.com. You can also email us a voice memo of you asking it your question. You might get your voice heard on air. If you'd like to do the same thing by downloading the KMUW app, you can do that and just click the Talk to Us button. You can find all of Kathy and Ross's books pretty much anywhere you get books, and a handful of them are also available on audiobook read by the authors themselves. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.